Is it too soon to say I'm done with winter?
Perfect.
Welcome to the vlog. As I mentioned last week, this week's episode is going to be about Old Faithful here. I call it a weight scale. Linda laughs at me. She goes, why isn't it just a scale? She always has the good questions. So the number on the scale, is it a useful metric at the end of the day if you really want to track your fitness, your overall fitness, or is it a throwaway number? So before we jump into this, let me tell you a little bit about my experience using a scale and the reasons why I use a scale. The scale to me is good and it's bad. For whatever reason, and let's not get too deep into the psychological ramifications of using a scale, because we can get pretty deep, not into my own psyche, but also into your psyche a little bit. But for me, using a scale, for whatever reason, I have a benchmark weight in my head. Why I have that number, I have no idea, but it's a baseline, and I don't like to fluctuate too far above it, and I don't like to drop too far below it. But it really means nothing. It's just a number. So the number I have in my head is about 145 pounds. That's where I like to be. That's where I'm comfortable. I don't like to deviate too much above and below that, as I just said. But that number is totally made up. I don't know what it means. All it means to me as a number is that's where I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable in my clothes. I'm comfortable in my body. That's where I feel I'm at my best, at around 145 pounds. But at the end of the day, it's just a number. And is jumping on the scale the best way to track your progress, your fitness progress? Well, I think the answer there is no, it's not. For example, the scale only tells you your overall weight. I don't know if you know this or not, but a pound of fat and a pound of muscle weigh exactly the same. The difference between the two is that fat takes up way more space than muscle does. So how often do I jump on the scale? Realistically, I probably jump on the scale every other day. Do I need to do that? Probably not. Is my weight fluctuating that much? Definitely not. Okay, so what then are the negatives for a scale? Well, number one, it can create mental obstacles and it can become obsessive. It also, your weight is going to fluctuate and it's going to depend on when you jump on that scale, right? Like you can consume a ton of water on a ride and your weight balloons a little bit. Conversely, you can lose a ton of water on a ride and your weight will drop. And again, it's just a number. It doesn't dictate to you what your overall fitness is. Ultimately, you need to listen to your body, and your body is going to tell you at the end of the day, really, how you're doing, what your fitness is like. You know, I mentioned that I've been as low as 138 pounds. To be quite honest, I'd rather be above my benchmark weight of 145 pounds because when I was down to 138, that was not good. Again, I'm 6 foot, so 138 is really too small for my frame. And you also open yourself up and more susceptible to illnesses. And once you get one of those illnesses, be it a common cold or a flu, it's really hard to fight that. So 145 is good. A little bit above that, I'm totally fine with. But getting much below that, you're just opening yourself up to more difficulties in fighting the common viruses that are around these days. Yeah, I'd be really interested to hear your feedback on if you use a scale. I know a lot of cycling friends, cycling buds do use a scale and do keep an eye on their weight for whatever reason. But again, it is not an indication of your overall fitness. Will I continue to use a scale? Hell yeah, I'll continue to use the scale. But I also know people who don't use a scale. I don't think Linda uses a scale at all. I don't think your actual body weight is a true indication of ultimately how you feel and ultimately your fitness. Escape the basement, heading out for some nutrition. Is this nutritious?
And delicious.
Is it nutritious?
Is it nutritious? Well, it's not bad. How about that? It's maybe not the healthiest, but it's not the worst. I take it back, it's nutritious.
What food is not the healthiest, but is kind of nutritious and 100% delicious? It can only really be one thing. Falafels. Totally starving, famished. Need some carb replenishment. Not a better place to come than chickpea.
Cheese.
You've seen the lentil soup on this vlog previously, but today we're having something a little bit different. Falafel plate. Right?
Yeah. And hummus.
And hummus. And the World Cup just finished. It was the final today. Argentina versus France. It's a pretty good game. Went to extra time, went to penalties. By the time this video goes up and out on YouTube, you would have already seen that Argentina won.
Massive, massive celebrations worldwide.
Worldwide celebrations, and good for Lionel Messi. Lionel, that little nugget of an Argentinian. So, I told the viewers that you rarely use the scale, or as I like to call it,
The weight scale.
the weight scale. So, what's the story behind that?
Yeah, that's the truth. I never weigh myself. Never. I can't remember the last time I weighed myself at home. My doctor weighs me when I go for a checkup, but that's it. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a number, and it doesn't reflect my health. It doesn't reflect how I feel. It's not a good metric to judge whether I'm taking good care of myself. It's just a number that can fluctuate. So I don't bother with it. And I think that too many people become obsessed with that number, and if they're above that number, they discipline themselves to the point where there's no enjoyment. And I don't really want to fall into that trap, so I just don't. I have other things though. I think joint mobility health is super important, so that's something that I focus on. More recently, being better at cardio is something I now focus on. Before it was just yoga and Pilates for exercise. That's it. As long as I can do a yoga squat, golden.
Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, do what makes you feel comfortable, but don't rely on that number on the scale. Live your life, people. Have a good time. We're racing home so I can get on the scale.
After all that falafel.
I had too much falafel. Now I need to see if I've ballooned to 147. I'm such a chunky monkey. Have a great week. We will regroup. Take care.